Alright, good morning people of YouTube. So we are back again today with kind of a discussion video. So lately the topic of conversation among the Digimon community has been two-color control, Ronald McDonald control, McDonald's control, whatever you want to call it. It's there. It's all anybody wants to talk about that and Rookie Rush right now. So we're gonna kind of talk about my thoughts on the deck, where I think it stands in the meta, and where I think it's gonna stand in the meta moving forward. So what I want to start off with saying is this concept was based off of lists that were topping in the Japanese towards the end of BT3. They didn't really have as much time to work with the cards as we did, since we had set delays in between our set 4 and whatnot. Cat's trying to rub up on the camera and everything. So the deck didn't really have as much time to flourish there as it did here, and people kind of picked up where the Japanese left off. And that's kind of what we have currently. And so for the past couple weeks, it's been topping events. It won PPG's latest regional qualifier. Really wish I had the chance to attend that, but I had to work that day. So, but yeah, it's winning. And what makes a deck tier 1 or tier anything, like the tier, in my opinion, tier lists are based off of representation and results, right? And so the deck has had representation for about a month now. It's had results, like it won this huge tournament and had multiple other top finishes within it, and it's been getting top finishes for weeks now. So I don't think the deck is any less than tier 1.5. Like, you can make the argument that it's tier 1, and it's hard to argue with that because right now it has a bunch of representation, it has a bunch of results. So if you want to say that deck is tier 1, I can't really argue with you there. I will not make a deck profile for this list, or for this deck, and cover it on the channel, because it is not my playstyle. Typically the deck profiles that I bring you are tested, tried, and true at least a little bit, and if they aren't capable of winning a tournament, then I preface it with that and say that it's mostly a fun deck. But so I will not be testing that deck because it is not my playstyle. I do not like sitting and trying to time my opponents out or playing to deck out win conditions. I don't like that. I don't like getting draws in tournaments, because a lot of tournaments play until the last winner is standing, or there's one person that's undefeated, and it draws. If you get a draw early on, then you're out. You can't get first place anymore. So if you're playing a deck that plays to decking your opponent out, then you're inviting yourself to play to time. And if you're playing to time, then you invite yourself to get more draws. And I don't like that in a tournament setting. So do I think this deck is going to continue being tier 1? No, absolutely not. I think tier 1.5, fine. It could be a tier 1.5 deck. But once people learn how to play around it, and once people speed up as they're playing it or against it, it's not gonna be one of those things that they're stalling you out and they're pushing you to time. Speaking of ways to beat it, I do have some notes. We have lots of ways to actually beat it. Cards that I want to emphasize that are getting more play now than they were just because this deck is dominating the meta. We have the BT1 Wargreymon. Doesn't check options in security, so since there's a bunch of spot removal in that deck, that's an obvious choice. And one thing I do want to emphasize when playing against this deck as well is that if you want to include a tech as a one-of to beat this deck, you'll draw it, because their goal is to deck you out. So if you want to include one copy of this War Greymon in your red deck, or if you want to include ties, like I play tie in my Leopardmon, the red starter deck tie, and I include one copy of a Delicate Plan, if I'm playing against two-color Ronald McDonald Control, then the odds of me drawing this one of during the course of the game are very, very high, because they're trying to deck me out. So I'm going to see all my cards. So all I need to do is get them to 4 security and then go wide. And then get one turn where I see this Delicate Plan and I just go, I'm going to drop this. And now you lose. Simple as that. So one-ofs against this deck are fine, because their goal is to deck you out. You will see them. So teching against this deck is super easy, which is one of the main reasons that I don't think it's going to stay at the top of Tier 1. When this format kind of started, it looked like it was going to be a triangle format, where you had green, yellow, and red consisting of the triangle, where green would beat yellow, yellow would beat red, and red would beat green. And that was what people thought was going to happen at the beginning of the format. And it almost seems like all of those decks were pushed down to Tier 2, and Rookie Rush and McDonald's Control are the Tier 1 decks right now. That's almost how it seems. I'm hesitant to say that because there's still a lot of Shine list topping lately. There's still a lot of Red Omni topping lately. But Green Ceres definitely took a plunge. But with the rise of McDonald's Control, we see cards like Millenniummon and Piedmon taking off. This deck cannot answer Piedmon at all. If you spend 12 memory to them and you give them enough and they have to burn a couple options in their hand to get themselves down that much, or drop a Magnadramon, which is their best play in response to the Piedmon. But if they don't have the Magnadramon in hand and you drop a Piedmon on them and leave them at 10 memory, they are most likely going to answer the Piedmon and try to answer one of the other bodies, but then you still got another body out of it for free. So getting that much advantage that are off of one play is another way to really beat this deck. And so cards I want to emphasize that do that as well is like cards like Leopardmon, Crescarurumon, Mastamon, who trashes the security for free, doesn't check it, and is able to get another Digimon into play that you can use to aggress and swing with. Gallantmon, because you can trash their security, again, for free, and pop things like the Magna Angemon with Gallantmon's effect. Ragnalord, anything that has security attack like a lot, can just run through a deck like this, especially if you decide to include a single copy of a Delicate Plan. Like if you put like a couple red cards like Agumon Expert or something, a lot of people are putting in like the 2 copies of the Agumon Expert so that you can have one, and then if it dies you can use the second one to get it back, and so that you can always have a floating red card, so that you can use cards like Gaia Force and a Delicate Plan in any color deck. People are starting to do that now, and you could do something like that in like Ulforce deck and Delicate Plan your Ulforce on the turn that you're going to swing, and you can gain the 1 memory off of Ulforce, so you can Delicate Plan for free basically. And any deck like that, Millenniummon is one of the best answers to this deck because they have to remove it twice. Basically, there are a lot of cards that do well that were pushed to like Tier 2 status, Tier 1.5, and even like Rogue deck status, that are going to pick up a whole lot because of the rise of this deck. And you see cards that picked up in the rise, or picked up in popularity because of the rise of Rookie Rush. Like, people are playing Shakuamon in almost every Shine list now because Shine loses to Rookie Rush. Like, people will tech cards to beat their worst matchups. And if you lose to McDonald's Control, that's a highly represented deck right now. So you probably should be teching at least a copy of something to improve that matchup, because if you do enter a tournament, you are likely to see it. Like, anything aside from like locals, if you go to your locals and you know the players that are playing in your locals, then you can kind of build a deck to play around them. I do not have that luxury, because a lot of my friends at my locals all have like 3 or 4 different decks, and we have a bunch of other friends that like playing the game too, so we'll let them borrow our decks as well. So at our locals, you kind of never know what you're going to go up against. So if you're going into a big tournament, it's really easy to tech something in, but if you're playing in a local scene, maybe you don't even have to worry about it. But I included a bunch of cards that do just beat it outright. So if you are a deck that doesn't beat it outright, or you aren't playing any of these tech cards and you run into a situation where you're playing against this and you have to beat it, what you can do is you can build up or try to build like the perfect stack in the raising area, and then go wide all at once. Take advantage of a big turn, get them down to 3, and then leave them at 1. Force them to Magnadram on you, and then take that 10 memory and set up a winning board for the next turn, so that no matter what, you can win. There are ways to beat this deck, even if you supposedly have a losing matchup. Like, I played against this, one of the earlier versions of this, with my Dino Beat deck, and so it's a losing matchup for Dino Beat. I still won that matchup in that tournament. Like, it was 2-1. I lost the first game because I didn't know what it did, but after I lost the first game, I was like, all right, this is fine. And then I won games 2 and 3. At least I think that's how that went. Maybe I won game 1, and then I lost game 2, and then I figured it out. Either way, only took me a game to figure out what the guy was trying to do, because I've seen similar decks like that in like Duel Masters and Kaijudo. It's basically the same as all of those yellow-red decks back then, or the yellow-blue decks, or even the red-blue decks. But basically, they would stack their decks with a lot of Shield Blast, and whenever you'd break your opponent's shields, these cards would activate and just remove your entire board. Or you'd activate a Bottle of Wishes as a Shield Blast, and then they'd be like, haha, I get to play the top card of my deck for free. And it would just swing games massively in their favor. So I've played against scarier versions of this, so this deck doesn't frighten me. But there are certain rogue decks that will rise in popularity because of this. Like I said, Leopardmon, Crescaruru, Rust Tyranno, anything that's playing like a bunch of Security Digimon, because Security Digimon are really good against this deck. They go and swing in with their Serafi, and then they have extra bodies that they suddenly have to deal with. That deck is something that they kind of plan out a couple turns ahead, and if something doesn't go according to their plan, then they kind of have to scramble to adapt. Mastamon, Ragnalord, all of these things are going to rise in popularity because of this deck. So I think that's about all I wanted to cover in regards to this. In short, yes, it might be a tier 1 deck for now. No, it won't stay there for very long, but it won't fall any lower than tier 2. Maybe when set 4 comes out, it'll drop to rogue deck status, but we'll see when set 4 comes out. But yeah, let me know if you guys want to see other discussion videos like this for other decks. This was an interesting one to make because it's definitely been a hot topic of conversation among the community, and everybody's just covering lists, and I wanted to talk about the theory behind it and where I think it'll stand and where I think it'll go. So let me know if you thought this was productive or if you want to see more like this, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Have a good day.